Alright, so for a long time now, people have had some misconceptions about the balance team of Shindo Life and Shindo Life balancing in general, and I just want to take this video to clear up the air and just let you guys know how the balancing goes so that you guys can actually get involved. There's a lot of different ways that the community can actually get involved in balancing, contrary to what people believe. In this video, I'll be talking about that. I'll be telling, everything about balancing. I'm going to say how it happens, why it happens, and all that stuff. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, right to the video, guys. Alright, so the first point we're making is just generally going to be the balance team. Now, I'm going to be starting off with how people are chosen. Now, people are generally chosen through, obviously they do the forms that people fill out. Generally, the people that write the most usually get in because the admin that goes over them doesn't really like to read through them all the way. That's a joke, obviously, but putting more usually does mean that you get in a lot more likely than the people that just write basically nothing. I would also like to say that some people are chosen not through this. Like me personally, I was invited to the team a long time ago, and throughout my time on the team, I haven't really, I'll get onto that a little bit later, but I wasn't really chosen through forums. There's another person that wasn't chosen through forums. It's just kind of how people are chosen on the team. There's like one of two ways you can get on. Now, in the history of the balance team, actually before I became balance team, a balance team member, the balance team was actually non-existent. Like there was a balance team, but they just generally didn't do anything at all. They were insanely inactive. There wasn't balance changes for like literally like 5 to 6 months. And the main reason why the balance team actually came back, I made a video a long time ago based on, like, it was basically Light Jokai sucks and here's why. And people, yeah, the Light Jokai you see now is as a result of me, saying how bad Light Jokai wasn't released. On release, it was pretty terrible. Now it's pretty good, as you guys can tell. But yeah, that's actually the reason why the balance team started to become active again. And ever since then, they've been rotating members in and out of it. People join, people leave. It's just how the balance team is. But, over the history of the balance team, there has been some big changes that we've done, some big changes that we haven't done. And I'm going to go into a little bit further detail on that. But it is worth mentioning that, the history of the balance team, over the history, over the entire history of the balance team, based on from when I started being on the balance team, there has been a lot of good changes, but there's also been some bad changes. I'm going to be going over some of the bad changes and some of the good changes, just so you guys are aware. Now, there actually is a balance team captain. His name is Rayquaza. He's in the Rogue Games Discord. If you guys would, suggest anything, feel free to go DM him. There's also a balance team admin, which is Aiden. He actually is, he was the head before Rayquaza, so that's something, be aware of if you actually want to, So I just want to, give a quick example of how the team operates. Pretty much people put in suggestions on what to do, and the other members of the balance team upvote and downvote them. Sometimes the votes are then sent to the community based on which ones did the best, and then the community actually votes on them. What you see with the community voting in the Rogue Games is the exact same thing that the balance team does, but a lot of the, I would say 80% of the time, a lot of the suggestions just don't really make it into the game, even if they're like very, highly upvoted, things. Just because, Rogue Games, they're obviously very busy, don't really go through the suggestions all the time, and they generally go through the suggestions, I would say, about once a month. I'm not aware. I'm not going to speak on their behalf. I don't know how often they go through it. I just know how often the changes generally happen, and usually the changes happen when they specifically ask for suggestions. When they ask for suggestions, that's generally when the changes actually happen, and the other times people just put it in and it generally doesn't make it into the game. Now, the thing that actually goes against this are glitches. They do actually read the glitches like all the time. All of the glitches that are posted there are mainly fixed within the first like week. Sometimes the glitches go, unfixed for a while longer than that, but that's just because, there's just, it just doesn't happen. I don't know what to say about that. Most of the time the glitches are suggested. It's just sometimes they're fixed, sometimes they're not. Now, on to my second point. It's going to be that not everything is controlled by the balance team. Now, I know this may be a surprise to some of you guys, but some of the changes you guys see, the balance team just wasn't involved with at all. Also, sometimes, sometimes one member of the balance team says something and the rest of the balance team doesn't agree with it, but it goes through anyways. There's a lot of, things that just slip through the cracks and stuff like that. There's not really a very, strict system on what gets implemented in the game and what doesn't. And honestly, a lot of the time, with like these absolute massive balance changes, the balance team was only involved in about 25 or 50% of it. And usually a lot of the, huge changes, the balance team is generally only involved with getting the things instead of, involved with saying what gets buffed or nerfed. Now, I think this is an important thing to say because people generally think that everything that happens is because of the balance team, which just honestly isn't true. I would say, so a lot of the small changes are because of the balance team, but usually the gigantic changes really aren't. Now, recently, the balance team has been doing a lot of the stuff that you guys have been seeing, but, for the, like, AoE big changes, the balance team wasn't involved. For the instant move changes, it wasn't really the balance team. There's, like, there's some changes here and there that the balance team also was involved in. So, before you start going like, oh, the balance team sucks, which sometimes, I will say this, sometimes the suggestions are pretty terrible and they do end up going through. I'll talk about about that a little bit later in the video, but not everything is controlled by the balance team. So that's just something to be aware of when you're actually looking at these updates. Now, my next point is going to be that the impact of the balance team. Now, the true impact of the balance team, I feel like has been overall positive, but there has been some negatives as well. There's some changes here and there that definitely were not really that great and were never reverted. Generally, when changes happen, they don't ever get reverted. It's very, very rare that a change ever gets reverted. That's just something to be aware of. But the impact of the balance team can either be small or big depending on how much Rel actually listens to the balance team, or, you know, how much the community does and stuff like that. Generally, when the community gets riled up over something being broken, they pay more attention to the balancing. So it's actually more of the community than the balance team a lot of the time. If the community ends up being a lot louder, then the balance team ends up having more of an impact because the community is actually louder. So honestly, the impact of the balance team is honestly, it goes from being small to being big over and over and over again. And honestly, just depends on the update. It depends on how the game has been and stuff like that. And generally, I feel like the impact of the balance team varies from month to month. Sometimes it's literally non-existent. Sometimes it's pretty, straightforward. And I will say this, a lot of the times when you guys get your favorite bloodlines nerfed, it is generally is because it actually is broken. I feel like there's a lot of times where there are bad suggestions, where there are things that go through that probably shouldn't have went through. But I would say about 80% of the time the balance change needed to happen, but it just didn't happen for an extremely long time. Now, this is something to also put out there. We don't just balance, we also fix glitches as well. A lot of the glitches you guys see fixed are because of the balance team, whether it's 1, 2, or more of the members. And generally, we are pseudo glitch finders. We do report glitches to the Rel games to get fixed and stuff like that, especially game breaking glitches. Those get fixed almost immediately. Now, the glitches are usually the things that get fixed faster than the actual balance changes, like I've said before. So that's just something to keep in mind. The balance team isn't only for balancing. We do actually fix glitches. By the way, guys, what has been your favorite balance update of Shindo Life? If you're to comments below, we'll be checking them out. Now, I'm actually also going to say my personal opinion on balancing in Shindo Life and stuff like that. And I'm going to be going through, some of the changes I really didn't like, some of the changes I absolutely loved. And just so you guys have an opinion on, what changes that I have personally, had an impact on in the game. So, first of all, I just want to get this out of the way. Some of the big changes I actually did not like at all. Like the perfect block change, I wasn't a big fan of that. I do feel like it's a good idea, but in implementation, it has shown that, really it just incentivizes, extended fights. It incentivizes just running away over and over and over again. It only, wanting these high damage moves for absolute, massive burst combos instead of, actual versatility and combos. I have said this before and I will say this again. Perfect block was the death of actual versatile combos. Before that, with the auto dodge meta, there were M1 combos were definitely still meta back then, but you could use other combos and be just fine. But now it's literally only burst combos, only like 3 or 4 moves. That's it. That's all you get. The rest of your moveset is just iframes, running away, or healing. Now, I also want to put this out there that there has been some changes in the past I wasn't really a fan of, which was the instant ability change. Pretty much they nerfed every instant ability in the game, and I do think the heart was there, but their instant abilities ended up just getting re-added to the game. So now all these moves that were fine before are now absolute garbage, and now there's a bunch of new instant moves that have basically taken their place. Now, I do feel like there has been definitely some changes by the balance team specifically that hasn't really been, that great. Either some things are just getting way over buffed, some things are getting nerfed, but you just got to understand that the balance team is human, just like the rest of everyone. There will be changes despite the balance team being quite big. There are people, putting in suggestions and stuff like that. Sometimes, the majority is wrong, and it's just bound to happen one time or another. There will always be bad changes, and this is my personal opinion on like bad changes and stuff like that. I feel like sometimes the bad changes should go through, but there needs to be a reversion of some of the bad changes. Some of the bad changes just need reverted after they're done. And they're done, you see it, you understand that it wasn't really a good change, and it's reverted after that. But the reason why it doesn't get reverted is because, it's a lot of work for rogue games to do something and then undo it. And it honestly just makes no sense for rogue games to undo it at that point, because if it was, it's just a waste of time for them. I feel like that's the best way of explaining it. So there will be some, bad changes. Like, for example, broomstick on auto dodge global cooldown, absolute terrible change. Senko first is now an instant block breaking long ranged hit stun. Combo breaker, absolute dump truck of a move. Like that move is quite literally one of the best EKG moves in the game. And in the end of it, I feel like there has been some other bad changes, like explosion second being turned into a block breaker really isn't that great. There's some other ones, you know, sprinkled in there that have slipped through that really just haven't been that great of a change, and honestly kind of either made the bloodline way too broken and stupid OP, or just made the bloodline absolute trash. Now, the bloodline absolute trash, there are some, you know, that haven't really been that great. Now, I will say this. I did not like RyujiKenichi at all. RyujiKenichi mode getting nerfed was a combination of me and other members, but I will say this. I absolutely hated low HP mode. I think it was dumb. Obviously, I could beat people using it, but I was kind of one of the main reasons why that crap got nerfed, and I'm happy about it. Divination 2, that was super unskilled, unfun, and I'm glad it got nerfed as well. But sometimes there's some other nerfs that I'm kind of just like, oh, you know, maybe that shouldn't have happened. And I feel like there is something that happens throughout the history of Shindo Life, is that when something gets nerfed, it gets nerfed hard. It gets butchered, it gets destroyed. That's kind of what happens when moves get nerfed, unless it's like literally such a minuscule nerf. It's either so tiny of a nerf that it doesn't even matter, or it's so big. There's no in between. There's no, you know, average. If something gets nerfed, it gets slaughtered. That's generally how the consensus goes with the nerfing moves. And on the opposite end, buffing moves, they don't get omega buffed a lot of the time. They just get like 5,000 more damage thrown in. One less hand sign. There you go, pal. Great move after that. Absolute broken, stupid OP. Like, no, that's not how it works. But, you know, obviously there has been some, you know, cases of absolute bloodlines getting absolutely dumpstered and getting destroyed because of, you know, big giant nerfs. But a lot of the time they end up getting rebuffed in the future. There has been a few that haven't gotten rebuffed yet. And it is truly a travesty to see these once, you know, super popular bloodlines being destroyed. Like Ryan Gaiden, for example, was never really that great in the first place. It was just, you know, above average, and then it was absolutely slaughtered with the second move getting hand signs added. Pretty much like the only good move, you know, was changed. You know, I could go on about this for years, but I just want to give my personal view of the balance. I do feel like nerfs need to happen eventually, but I feel like it should be done over time so players can have time to switch out their bloodlines. This is something I've always said, and I do feel like it has been taken into account recently, where things getting nerfed over time is a lot better than stuff being like, boom, get spanked, get absolutely hammered, destroyed, slammed. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the past, like, bloodlines would be one update insanely OP and then another update and be absolute garbage. I feel like it should be over time so people have a chance to get rid of the bloodline, because obviously you have to grind for spins, you have to grind for rail coins. You know, rail coins are not, you know, infinite per se, because they're really hard to grind, so people spend an entire code on it, then it gets nerfed. That's why people get mad. I understand why people get mad, and that's why I personally feel like that nerfs should be spaced over updates and buffs should be prioritized over nerfs a lot of the time. But I will say this, the reworks recently have been absolutely amazing, and I do feel like, you know, the balance changes recently have been a lot better than before, and I do feel like overall the balancing has improved. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, post it, guys. Bye bye.